Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our Friday panel tracks spending estimates for the fall referendum. But first, big projects, big dollars.
I'm certainly hopeful that the kinds of asks that we're bringing forward are the kinds of things that they're looking for from municipalities across the country.
I don't believe we're going to get everything, but we have to put forward the items that are a priority for us, and that's what we're going to do.
With the goal of securing significant federal budget funding, Calgary City Council will be asking Ottawa for nearly $1 billion to help cover costs for upgraded water pipes, LRT projects, and refurbished leisure centres. And joining us now to discuss this and more is the Mayor of Calgary, Jeremy Farkas. Mr. Mayor, good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right, well, let's start on this submission to the federal finance minister for some significant dollars. It's a letter I understand ultimately you have to sign off on. But why split the ask up over multiple projects and not focus on one big one?
Well, firstly, just appreciate the partnership of the federal government. The Prime Minister, as well as the various ministers, have expressed an interest on these nation-building projects, stuff that we can get shovels in the ground as quickly as possible. So when it comes to advancing a portfolio approach, that's really essential. Having, say, $1 billion ask is a lot harder than, say, many different smaller projects that can be out the door a lot quicker. But for us, it's not so much about asking for a handout. It's getting our fair share of investment from Ottawa back here in Alberta. So it's not just making the case for what Calgary's needs are, but also arguing in favor of more predictable funding streams for municipalities. So also Red Deer, Edmonton, other local areas that are bearing out most of the population growth. And this is really connected as well. We heard in some of the recent data that Canada's population rather is overall staying flat or modestly declining, whereas Alberta as a province is continuing to boom. So we need to have that federal investment where the growth is occurring, particularly around services and infrastructure right here in Calgary, but also other major municipalities across the province.
Well, now, what degree of alignment does there need to be here where both the federal and the provincial government are concerned for this to be a successful ask?
Well, certainly. Here in Calgary, we have about a $50 billion infrastructure deficit when it comes to our needs over the next 10 years. Certainly, we're going to be advancing everything that we can within our own control municipally. But when you look at the overall revenues that are generated by levels of government, about 8 cents on the dollar are municipal level, and the remaining 92 cents of property tax, or rather taxes and other revenues, go to the provincial and the federal government. So this is very much about arguing for Alberta's fair share of our contributions to Confederation to return back to our province, but it's also relating to Calgary getting its fair share of investment from the provincial government. So ways that we can work together with the province and feds, particularly around economic development, public safety, making ongoing operating costs more efficient, that's really central to our asks.
On the point of alignment, Council recently voted to put all downtown Green Line options back on the table. Why push that when you know a tunnel is a no-go where the Smith government is concerned?
Well, it's really about flexibility. The provincial government has requested that we continue to explore that elevated option, but we've heard resoundingly from 80, 90, 95% of local residents, businesses, major downtown office owners, local entrepreneurs about how this is just a no-go. We've heard a lot around the economic impacts of building it in this way, about the safety impacts of doing that, and just want to appreciate the fact that we have a premier who largely listens to local residents and businesses. So they've signaled to us at the provincial government a flexibility in terms of how we could approach that alignment. Perhaps we don't build as far deep into the downtown and we use some of the savings to go further into the southeast where we can drive some of the ridership and better sharpen our pencils in terms of what might be applicable downtown. But right now, based on the initial year ago from the provincial government to us, it's not tenable, particularly around the economic business case. We stand to lose potentially billions or tens of billions of dollars of assessed value if this Green Line were to be built this way through our downtown. And that would have significant ramifications on the property taxes. We don't just collect in municipal coffers, but also provincially. So this is a matter of just measuring twice, cutting once, making sure that we get things right. And again, just really appreciate the provincial government's support on this, because because they're hearing the same things we are, particularly around the public safety and the economic impacts if we were to proceed this way.
On the point of getting things right, members of council had a look this week at the Calgary plan, a vision guiding the city to 2050 and beyond. What does this vision say about tough conversations that are likely to lie ahead?
Well, for the prospect of planning, it's very difficult to plan, say, even 10, 20, let alone 50 years into the future. But if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So for us, we want to make sure that we continue to invest in the capital needs for Calgarians, that we have the rec center, the services, the transit, the transportation corridors where we need them, and also that we take a bit more of a thoughtful approach to housing development. So we heard through the course of the campaign that Calgarians didn't support a blanket zoning approach. So we moved quickly to repeal that. And we're going to be moving forward, really focusing on those nodes and corridors, concentrating the development to happen near LRT stations, closer to education, employment, where the services and infrastructure are in place to support that.
All right. I have to think there might have been a bit of a bounce in your step this week with a new Leger poll suggesting 70% of Calgarians surveyed approve of the job you're doing as mayor. 14% disapprove. Surprised at all by that, even in light of how much you've pushed back against the Smith government adding a separation question to the October referendum?
Well, I certainly appreciate that broad support from both UCP voters and NDP voters, and I think it rewards a pragmatic approach here at City Council. We really want to make City Hall boring again. We want to focus on the nuts and bolts. We want to pick up garbage on time. We want trains to run. We want public safety to be focused on, and I really appreciate the fact that Calgarians have supported me in that advocacy toward the provincial government and federal government on the things that aren't going right. But it also means I'm responsible for congratulating and supporting the Premier on the things that she is doing right. So again, really appreciate the flexibility that Calgarians have supported me in, but more so that the numbers were very impressive, particularly around the fact that Calgarians felt that our city was going in the right direction, even if they may not believe that the province or the country or the world is. We really want here in Calgary to be that place of stability, that place of certainty. And I certainly appreciate the fact that the vast majority of Calgarians have supported me in speaking out about the economic risks that separation entails. We know that this is a huge distraction, has a huge negative impact on local economy and job creation here in Calgary. And I'm certainly going to be continuing to speak up about the impacts of that separation conversation. But I'm also going to continue to be fierce and advocate on the needs here in Alberta, sentencing and bail reform, access to energy markets, and so on. So this isn't a perfect country that we live in, but I'm not going to let anybody kick me out of my own country. We need to fix Canada, and we need to step up, as we always have as Albertans, to build this best country in the world.
All right. We'll leave it there for time. As always, appreciate your time, Mayor Farkas. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate it. See you next time.
That's Calgary Mayor Jeremy Farkas. From putting a price tag on the fall referendum to fed up Fort McMurray residents, a new Canada Post stamp honoring a notable Albertan, and Hockey Night in Canada going dark. Our Primetime This Week panel is in, and joining us this evening, Trisha Estabrooks, former chair of Edmonton Public Schools, currently a public health advocate with Friends of Medicare, and Tom Keenan, professor in the School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape at the University of Calgary. He's also the author of Techno Creep. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the building dialogue around just how much the fall referendum could end up costing. Well, the 2023 general election carried a price tag of $37 million. The October vote will have 10 times more ballots and ballot boxes, requiring a lot more staffing by Elections Alberta.
Assuming that we're looking at 60,000 people working in this referendum, that's 4.5 times the number in the last general election.
That's former Chief Electoral Officer Lauren Gibson, and he's come up with a cost projection accounting for inflation on salaries, ballot printing, and building rentals.
If you make those assumptions and consider those factors, we're looking at the fall referendum costing something in the neighborhood of $120 to $130 million.
While the finance minister says that seems extremely high, he has yet to provide a figure.
We'll make sure Elections Alberta has the resources to do the job that they need to do. But I can't see why a province-wide vote would cost any more than it would cost us to run a general election.
And some don't have a problem with the potential cost, even those who track government spending.
The ability for Albertans to have their say in a referendum or to recall a politician and hold by-elections, like, these are essential tools to a grassroots democracy. We'd like to see a lower price tag, but we don't want to see them gone. Elections Alberta says it will not have an official budget ready until the fall. Trisha, given that comparison of $37 million for the last general election, how do you see an estimated price tag of $130 million for a referendum going over with Albertans? How easy a sell would that be for the government?
I mean, I think, Michael, the key word here is tax dollars. These are dollars that belong to Albertans. And so to see what I consider to be a huge price tag to run an election, which, let's not forget, the reason why we're seeing such elevated costs is because of this current government's decision to do away with the electronic tabulators, which means, of course, that all of these questions, the referendum questions, the 9 ones, plus the big one on the sovereignty question, and the process to begin that process requires hand counting of ballots. And so, you know, it's interesting to see the Canadian Taxpayers Federation talk about these are essential tools. And of course, we're talking about democracy here and Albertans weighing in on these key questions. But in my mind, an essential tool here is actually technology. And again, the UCP's decision to do away with electronic tabulators, which were proven to work, is a huge factor. And I think that's something we need to be talking about. And I'd also say I can think of a heck of a lot better ways to spend $130 million than hand counting ballots in this upcoming referendum. Well,
Tom, how pressured will the government be to keep those costs down for this referendum? And is there even, maybe to Trisha's point, is there even the flexibility to rein those costs in?
I'm about to save them $50 million, okay? Because one of the things they want to do is have 10 separate color-coded ballots and have 10 separate ballot boxes. And they obviously think Albertans are too stupid to take one piece of paper and fill it all out. So I went to the Staples website and found for $20.99 a thing called a paper cutter. You can even do 10 sheets at a time. So for heaven's sake, all they needed to do was put the 10 questions on the one ballot, let you check off your answers. They seem to think we get confused. Why? I don't understand. And then the election workers, I looked it up, they get $25 an hour. Worked out it's about 15 minutes of their time to take that paper cutter and cut the ballots in pieces. The other thing is, of course, this is silly because it's not being tied with any municipal elections. It's a total referendum waste of money and lots of money. And we had just found out that the coal referendum was a few days too late, so they're not going to have that on there. So we're going to do it all again.
Okay. All right. Well, for us, next up, Fort McMurray residents taking matters into their own hands. Fed up with the condition of the only highway in and out of town, they turned what started as a protest into a pothole-filling movement.
After a few months of complaining and sending emails, the whole community of Fort McMurray were a bit fed up with the empty promises and lip services from the Minister of Transportation.
Mohammed Terabin rallied the services of more than 80 volunteers from landscaping and construction companies, filling more than 200 potholes in a nearly 2-kilometer stretch of Highway 63.
We're very law-abiding citizens. We're a bit civil disobedient as well. And but my point is this: enough is enough.
In a statement to CTV News, the Ministry of Transportation says it put in an accelerated maintenance plan in place and will continue repairs, weather dependent. And while RCMP recommended against such citizen actions, no charges were laid and none are expected. Tom, how do you see this reflecting on the community?
Well, I feel their pain. We have potholes in Calgary. I hit them all the time, but I'm against vigilante parking. What could possibly go wrong? Maybe a worker gets injured doing that, and they're not officially working, right? So maybe they're not under workers' compensation, and that becomes an issue. What if they do a bad job filling the pothole and somebody breaks an axle? So there is a way to report this in Calgary and Edmonton, at least. You dial 311 and you tell your city about it. There's an app called See Click Fix that I've had a lot of fun with, because people, they air their grievances on this. So they talk about the potholes, but there's one guy who always raised about a car wash in his neighborhood. They were operating at 11:03 last night. You got to go get them. I found out, though, the city has stopped looking in Calgary and Edmonton. They don't look at See Click Fix anymore, so they don't have to worry about it. I can tell you the simplest solution to this: the residential speed limit in Calgary and Edmonton has been lowered to 40 kilometers an hour. If you don't hit the potholes so hard and so fast, it won't do as much damage. By the way, Fort McMurray's lagging behind. They're still 50 kilometers.
Well, and the unfortunate reality here is we're talking about Highway 63, which is a provincial roadway. So, Trisha, if there is a lesson to be taken away here, what should it be? Who should be paying attention?
You know, never underestimate, I think, the power of potholes to bring people together. Every municipal election, and Tom referenced this down in Calgary and certainly here in Edmonton, people get fired up about potholes. And I mean, look at these photos. These are roads. This is a major highway, as you mentioned, Michael, in and out of Fort McMurray. They are in bad shape. And so, you know, I think the message is the power of potholes to bring people together. Never underestimate a community that is saying enough is enough. And that's the message they've sent to this government, saying, you know, you're not paying attention to us. We're going to take matters into our own hands. And so this seems like a pretty loud and clear and direct message to the MLA representing that area, and of course to the Minister of Transportation of Alberta.
Yeah, and just by the looks of that, some of those images, those are some doozies of potholes. Time for us, though, to take a bit of a break. When we come back, honoring Indigenous leadership in sport and the end of an era in the world of hockey. More from our Primetime This Week panel in a moment. Welcome back. Canada Post honoring a trio of Indigenous sports leaders and their achievements beyond the field of play this week. During a ceremony at the Calgary Public Library Wednesday, new stamps unveiled featuring hockey great Brian Trottier, Northern Games advocate Edward Lenny, and multi-sport athlete Chief Wilton Littlechild. For the Musqueam resident, it's a reminder of letters connecting with family during years of forced separation through residential schools.
And in that stamped envelope was the love that I needed to carry on. So it's there's a special connection there.
Littlechild, who won 70 championships in multiple sports and went on to become a lawyer and an Alberta Member of Parliament, says athletics offered a path forward and inspired his work with young people.
I've said many times in public, and I repeat, that sports saved my life.
For Canada Post, it's a means of highlighting our nation's stories.
A stamp, although small from a scale perspective, is a reminder to all Canadians that we, as Canadians, have a lot of personal, shared stories and experiences.
The new stamps are the fifth set in a series launched 4 years ago recognizing Indigenous leadership. Tom, what's to be made of recognition in the form of a stamp? How far does that go to maybe cementing a legacy?
It used to mean a lot to have your face on a stamp. Now the question is, what's a stamp, right? That's these things. And I bought this roll of 100 at Costco in 1936 or something, right? I mean, we don't use stamps anymore. I'd be hard-pressed to find a postal outlet that had these stamps. Now, to be fair, you can definitely order them from the Canada Post and send them your credit card. They will give you whatever order of these stamps you want. I do think it's an honor, and it is kind of a big symbolic way to let people know that these folks were pretty important. And I thought it was great that they're still alive. like a lot of honors, you have to wait till you die. But, you know, one guy said I was in tears, so that's pretty good.
Trisha, it was just a couple of weeks ago, Chief Littlechild named among the 2026 inductees into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. Do Albertans know enough about his many accomplishments, the trail he's blazed over 82 years?
And it's so true. Like, he has left such an important mark, I think, on our province and on our country. I think of the truth and reconciliation conversations, one of which was held here in our city, Michael, in Edmonton. And Chief Willie Littlechild helped guide those key conversations for our country, for our nation, at a time as we were coming to grips and telling the truth of what happened in residential schools. And I just have to say, that clip from Chief Littlechild, where he talks about the love that was in those letters and recognizing the importance of that stamp that carried that love to him in residential schools, that's very powerful. Directly to your question, though, I think there is still continued learning to know about who Chief Littlechild is. I certainly was familiar with his political career and his very important role with the TRC, whereas I didn't know that he had this amazing sports history as well. So certainly there is room for and I think of young kids, you know, his comment there about how sports saved his life. That's important teachings that I'd love to see all Alberta students in our classrooms know about and learn about. And this stamp, I think, is part of that legacy.
Yeah, and speaking of sports, the end of an era after nearly 75 years on the air, a Saturday night staple, delivering many of our nation's biggest sporting moments, including multiple Stanley Cup victories for the Edmonton Oilers. There it is. Remember that well. It's going dark.
It's like everything in life. It's like we're all moving forward in different directions. It's a splintering of what was a family tradition.
Hockey Night in Canada is woven into the national fabric, bringing the game free over the airwaves, but now a deal with the NHL rights holder, that's Rogers Communications. That deal is ending, meaning CBC can no longer air NHL games.
It really is the end of an era for not only Canadians, but for an important chapter of Canadian culture where hockey was coast to coast to coast.
It's all part of changing viewer habits and the growth of streaming platforms.
Welcome to the world of pay-per-view sports. The NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball are all going down that path. It's only a matter of time before hockey did it. I think the reason that it took so long in Canada, of course, is because of our commitment to hockey.
Yeah, in place of Hockey Night in Canada, CBC plans a new Saturday show focusing on Canadian athletes. Trisha is a former employee of the national broadcaster. What resonates with you about the loss of Hockey Night in Canada?
You know, a former employer of CBC and also a huge hockey fan. Like, watching those clips play, I couldn't help but hear the Hockey Night in Canada theme song playing in my head, both the new version and the most recent version, or the old version as well. You know, to me, this is about taking a national treasure and privatizing it. And yes, this is all about money in my mind, right? And so yes, viewers' habits have changed. We're shifting more to a streaming service. And the reality is CBC just can't compete in the high stakes world of pay-per-view sports. And so this one's unfortunate. I think this is a huge loss for Canadians, and I hate to see such a public treasure turned over to the hands of private interests. Okay. And I know there's a lot of frustrated fans who simply actually aren't going to be able to afford the TSN streaming service, which I think is almost about $30 a month. What I do in my household is we pay for the streaming service when the Stanley Cup playoffs are on, and then I click it off. I put a note in my calendar and turn that off because I don't want to pay $30 a month. And I don't think a lot of Canadians do. Okay. It's our national sport. It's a national treasure. This one's gutting for me personally.
And Tom, we'll have to leave this conversation for the next one because we're out of time. Just like Hockey Night in Canada. We'll have to leave it there.
Okay, follow the money. She's right.
Okay. Have a great weekend. Thank you both.
Thanks, Michael.
A few responses now to a recent story posted by CTV News about Premier Smith this week giving Albertans a $100 affordability grant. The announcement for that, as a matter of fact. Here's what average Canuck thinks. $100. Wow. Moneybag Smith and Nixon, you shouldn't have. Happy as a similar sarcastic response. Yay, I will be able to afford a steak this summer, but not gas. Brad would like to see the money spent elsewhere, writing, give my check to AISH recipients. B. Larson wants more, saying this should be on a monthly basis. And Ellen says, my vote is going to cost a lot more than that. Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. That is our program for tonight. Have a great evening and a great weekend, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.